Dunkin' has a whole new line of handcrafted signature lattes. Blueberry Crisp, Caramel Craze, and Cocoa Mocha. They're so delicious, you'll realize that you've been spending a whole latte time drinking the wrong coffee. So even though you've been together for years, it's time to say goodbye to your ex. Coffee Place. Because you've got a latte love for Dunkin's signature lattes. Sipping is believing with Dunkin's new handcrafted signature lattes, like Blueberry Crisp, Caramel Craze, or Cocoa Mocha. America runs on Dunkin'. Price and participation may vary. Limited time offer.
TV party tonight! TV party tonight!
Oh, we got nothing better to do than watch TV and have a couple of brews.
Don't want to talk about anything else.
We don't want to know.
We're dedicated, yes, to our favorite shows!
Oh, my circus!
Everybody loves Hypnotoad.
Scary dog!
Pearson and Blurnsville.
Futurama!
Good evening. Welcome to a Rattlegion Broadcasting Network premiere podcast TV party tonight. I'm your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Rattledge. And tonight is the night that our favorite show is Legion, Season 3. And joining me on this excursion tonight is the one and only Jesse Starcher. How do you do, sir?
Oh my goodness, ladies and gentlemen, you must be wondering, Legion Season 3, are we going to be getting more of Sid's naked ass? Well, unfortunately not, but there's going to be plenty more to talk about right here when we discuss this season tonight.
I had forgotten about Sid's naked ass, but yes.
How could you forget?
This show has been in sharp decline since we haven't seen Sid's naked ass. I'm going to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's probably the peak.
That was the hype. Now, could you imagine if Aubrey Plaza's naked ass and Sid's naked ass?
Oh, man.
That should have been one entire episode.
That's the grand finale. I mean, if you're going to end the series... Just a pair of, two pair of butt cheeks right there on the screen.
I think, and I don't know how you feel about this, but I think that Aubrey Plaza, Sid, and Amber Midthunder should have just been filmed at the ass, naked ass.
All right.
Just walking down a dark highway.
Oh, man. Well...
For 45 minutes.
45 minutes? Just them walking?
Just them walking. Would have been the best episode of Legion Season 3.
Well, unfortunately, you didn't get that, Mark. But we did get something that I really like in this season, and we'll talk about that here. I don't know what you want to do synopsis-wise, so I don't want to step all over you, but there's a plot element that they used. Yes, sir, I'm in it to win it.
Let me ask you a question, Jesse. What's with that thing around your neck? What do you think, you're gonna drown?
Oh, good one. Dork thinks he's gonna drown. Hey kid, what's with the life preserver?
Ah, fuck! I couldn't remember what they were called because I got the CAR-T going on.
That's all right. It's all right. I got your back.
Thank you. Yes. What's with the life preserver? Are you gonna drown? Jesse, ask me for a tab.
Hey, wait a second. Give me a tab.
I can't. What do you mean, give you a tab? I can't give you a tab unless you order something.
Give me a Pepsi free.
I'm not going to give you a Pepsi free. You got to pay for it.
It's great stuff, man. Give me something without no sugar. All right, here's Legion Season 3. Oh!
These are Back to the Future jokes, children.
Yes, and if you couldn't tell, time travel.
Oh, shit. There goes the neighborhood.
Yes, sir. That's what... Well, that would have been a nice body count song.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are Body Count, motherfucker. Here we go. Sid's naked ass. Damn.
Oh,
right.
You follow that up with Evil Dick easily.
Oh, yes. Evil Dick should go right into Sid's naked ass. All right.
Wow.
How you doing, Melissa?
Man, oh man, I hope this is not your first episode, ladies and gentlemen, of the TV party tonight.
My wife is on the couch, just into her IEP that she's writing, shaking her head, but she's not talking to me anymore.
Yep, I'm done.
What do you think about... Hey, Hey, what do you think about Evil Dick into Sid's naked ass? What do you think?
I don't know who Sid is.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'd rather
Sid-
you leave me out of it.
Sid is a character on Legion who's played by Rachel Keller. All
I
right.
think you're going to have to explain who Evil Dick is.
I don't have to explain
All
shit.
right.
I don't have to do anything except die and pay taxes.
True.
No, the line is I don't have to do anything but stay black and die. Hey, Legion Season 3 is the third and final season of the story of David Haller, if you hear me,
If you hear me.
who goes by the name Legion, who is a mutant diagnosed with schizophrenia at a young age. He's also an Omega level mutant with all kinds of psionic powers.
Yes.
And the writers of this, the showrunners, the people who developed Legion for FX, I believe they've said in interviews they really did design this to be a 3-season story. And so in the first season, they played a lot with the unreliable narrator. You have David, who doesn't know if his memories are real, doesn't know if he's really sick, or if he's just powerful, but his powers escape him because no one's ever taught him to use them. He's also plagued by nightmares, and what he'll come to find out is the Shadow King, Farouk something or other. I almost said Farouk Assad, but I don't think that's right.
Is it Ahmad Farouk? Ahmad Hassan?
Amal Farouk.
Amal Farouk. Okay, got it.
Yeah, the Shadow King. So that was and by the end of it, they do realize that he has been possessed by an evil spirit of sorts, that is Amu Farouk. And this comes out of the fact that that David is the son of Professor X, who the mom became catatonic. He gave away David as a child, and he was raised in an adoptive home, and then committed to a state psychiatric facility because of his issues. He had also been a drug addict, which is where allegedly he meets Aubrey Plaza's character, Lenny. And so the first season dealt with this group of mutants kind of breaking him out of there and trying to get him to understand what he is and trying to help him, and that's how he comes to, realize and then eventually expel the Shadow King from his psychiatric person, from his mind. And then he goes in a bubble to the Land of Oz. We don't really know.
Yeah, that was a weird one.
Season 2, he comes back from the Land of Oz, and I believe Season 2 is the hunt for the Shadow King, which at the end of it, I think the Shadow King convinces the other mutants that David is actually the real threat. He's going to destroy the world. And so then David just fucks off, and the hunt now it's the hunt for David, and that's where we find Season 3. That about right?
Sure.
Do you not remember the first two seasons?
It's been a while. I know that. I remember I wasn't impressed with Season 2 as much as I was with Season 1.
Yeah.
And we even did a review on here, but it was almost skirting that line of like, okay, I understand we have a lot of visual storytelling that we want to tell and make look amazing, but it was kind of hard to follow at some points. So that was one of the main worries I had going into Season 3. I was like, man, Season 2 ended where I remember there was a huge battle, and I think it was an astral plane battle that happened, and it seemed like, oh my gosh, Sydney? How could I forget her name? It seemed like Sid, had worries that Legion. It's funny, we covered this kind of in our source material discussion. It's very similar, where Legion is potentially going to end the world, or at least going to be responsible for it. So there's some time travel stuff that's kind of involved there too, where she's reaching back, trying to basically find out what happened and try to stop things. But that goes completely to the next level here in this season. So that's what I remember from Season 2. I can't remember much past that, though.
All right, well, let's pick up Season 3 here. The gist of season 3 is Division 3 is trying to hunt down David before he destroys the world. Meanwhile, we meet a new character by the name of Switch, who is a mutant that can time travel. And David wants a time traveler because he wants to go back in time to where he was a child, where he's an infant, and stop the events that caused him to be possessed by the Shadow King, and subsequently his mother going to Catatonia and his father giving him up for adoption, which is what caused all of the events that we've seen thus far. He feels that if he goes back in time and he, quote, fixes it, then everyone will have better lives. And that's the show kind of just deals with that. There's an episode that deals with just what happened with Charles and David's mother, Gabrielle. It shows the fight between Charles and Farouk. There's the whole first episode, you're kind of getting to know Switch a bit and how her power set works and all of that. You get to see David kind of really using, and again, this goes to the X-Men Legacy comic that we were reading alongside of this, where David is really using his powers, but he doesn't have the strongest moral compass.
Yeah.
So, he's kind of abusive to Switch, but in a passive, aggressive way, where he's she's falling apart at the seams, her teeth are falling out because he's pushing her too far, and he's like, no, it's fine, I'll fix everything. Greater good, keep going. Meanwhile, this poor girl has gone to pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it was an interesting way to show the effects of a person, a mutant that could time travel. It definitely takes its toll on the body. And, you recognize that, one of the first events where she goes back in time and then she reaches back and pulls out a molar, and you're like, oh, what is going on? Well, yeah, that has its consequences. So this person just can't willy-nilly go through time and change things. There's definitely a cost to it. And, and she's an interesting character, too. I mean, as much as she doesn't bring a whole lot other than just kind of be the vehicle to give David the opportunity to change things. Not a whole lot of... I mean, you have kind of an emotional attachment to her. You don't want to see her. You don't want to see her suffer, but you don't really have. Me personally, I didn't have that much of an emotional attachment as to whether they could have done more with her. How's that? They could have made me feel a little bit more sorry for her, and a little bit more into that character. We get a little bit about her relationship with her dad, but that's about it. So anyway, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Well, no, that's it. We can kind of kick this back and forth now. So the first 3 episodes really deal with David concocting this plan through use of a time traveler to go back and fix his life and therefore, fix everybody's life. And then we get the history of him and his parents. That's the first 3 episodes. So let's kind of chunk these together. There are 8 episodes in total, so we'll chunk the first 3 and then the next 3 and then the 2-part season finale. What did you think of the first 3 episodes?
Well, I think we have our introduction, of course, to our time traveler there in the first episode, where she does some kind of whacked out... I don't know what's going on, but there's these clues, these subtle clues that lead her to find this tube that will lead her to where David is this cult leader. And there's a bunch of people that are, David's definitely changed. He's trying to focus on the good side of life, and in doing so, there's some weird stuff that happens here. He's created this cult, I guess you would call it that, and they're all living off of, somehow he's changing these good emotions, or he's siphoning these good emotions and these good feelings into a bit of a drug that these followers just can't get enough of. And it's represented by this blue goo that comes through, and Apparently, the followers are all for that. But anyway, our time traveler follows these subtle clues and ends up at the house.
It's a liquid version of the Crystal Blue Persuasion from Breaking Bad.
Okay, I'm down with it. That sounds like a good plan to me. I mean, that sounds like a good call for it. So it's you see that change in Legion there, and you're just curious as to how things are going to go. So when the time traveler shows up, yeah, he's all about trying to figure out a way to change things. Give me some other stuff that happened there. Our third episode, was that the one where we go back and we look at
Yes.
Charles Xavier and Gabrielle and that whole story, which was interesting. It had Charles Xavier hadn't showed up yet in the show until that episode, right?
Well, there's one episode where David starts to understand what happened to him, and it's clear that his dad is Professor X, but the whole thing is done in like chalk outlines.
Okay, all right. So, yeah, here we get the actual physical representation, in the past of Charles Xavier and Gabrielle, and how that was a very touching episode where Professor X reaches out to Gabrielle while they're in that psych ward, and Professor X is trying to come to grips with the powers that he has, and then he brings her out of like this catatonic state, and they became, obviously lovers, and they were meant for each other, and they get married, and of course we have David. Give me some other thoughts here, man, because I'm looking at the synopsis and just trying to pick things out that really made me go, okay, because I had a hard time through these first three episodes.
So talk about that. I actually thought the first 3 episodes were fairly strong, and then it's like the next 2, I'm like, meh. And then the season finale, I really, I should say the next 3 were kind of, and then the last 2 episodes I thought were really strong and had a kind of a fun ending. So
okay.
what was your difficulty with the first 3 episodes?
There were just way too many points where I was looking at the screen going, I don't know what the hell's going on. And I think a lot of it happened in the first 2 episodes. I think episode 3 was easier to follow because of it tended to at least try to rely on linear storytelling in the past. But again, it's Noah Hawley, right? Is that his name?
Yeah.
Noah Hawley. So he brings such a unique vision to the show that sometimes if you aren't really paying attention, or you are just not a fan of linear storytelling, then you can be taken out by stuff that's going on the screen. That happened to me quite a bit there watching the first 3 episodes. And there is also the factor that I tried to watch them with my wife, who has little patience for things that involve, okay, why all of a sudden are people singing? And, why are we watching a music video right now? There were a couple times where I was like, okay, well, yeah, I'm right there with you, Mindy. I have no idea what's going on. The time travel aspect where they, we find out there in episode 3, and I want to keep kind of focusing on that because that's the one I mostly remember of those 3. I thought that was interesting because David goes back in time, but he cannot completely be back there to where he's like physically in front of somebody. Like he's trying to stop his mom from, or at least warn his mom that he's about to be infected by the Shadow King. And what ends up happening is, instead of him, showing up in physical form and saying, "Hey, don't do that," it's only like echoes and very faint voices to where he's kind of getting his message through, but his mom is completely misunderstanding what's going on, and she believes the fucking house is haunted.
Right.
I thought that was interesting. And he is, you see that he may actually be driving her more towards believing herself to be insane again. Now, this is, of course, after Charles Xavier leaves to go visit the Shadow King. But yeah, there is. I thought that was pretty neat. I thought that was put across pretty well.
Yeah, there's a causal paradox here. They did the sort of thing with Game of Thrones where a character sort of projects himself into the past, and the character Hodor, who is a simple guy, and he just says Hodor, which is what they call him. He actually started out as somebody else, but there's something happening, and they're like telling him to hold the door, and so he's like, Hodor, hold the door, Hodor, and so it's the interference of the future projection on the past that actually caused him to become what he is in the present.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what's going on with chapter 22, which is episode 3, where the story is essentially that Charles meets the Shadow King, and the Shadow King and him have kind of a fight, and I guess he loses, and so he ends up projecting himself onto David, but what got left out of the story is the time paradox of David also interfering in that moment in time that also drove his mother back into Catatonia.
Okay. That's neat. That's a neat way of showing the effects of, someone trying to attempt to time travel and not knowing exactly what they're getting into. I'm starting to realize some of the stuff that I remember from the first two. We were immediately taken right back to the fact that Sid and David, who are in love with each other, at least you think they are. We were rooting for them too. I remember in the first season, we're like, these guys are going to be a great couple. And then at the beginning of the third season, Sid is out to kill him. And as a matter of fact, I think kills him at least once, maybe possibly twice, because the time traveler ends up resetting things, or at least going back a couple times after Division 3 makes the attack on that compound. That's what I'm going to call it, a compound, even though it's a house. But they make that attack on the compound. So there's another aspect that I definitely remember. Is the fact that, we've come a long way from them two trying to develop a relationship and actually they fall in love, to where now Sid is out to kill David so that the world doesn't end. And that's where, of course, the time traveler is able to aid David, and we see like 2 or 3 different resets of time where David dies, and then that's where he's like, "Oh, wait a second, you're a time traveler," and then he gets the idea of what to do there. Do you think Sid is still in love with David, even though she has to do this? Is that what's going on? She feels compelled to do this, or at one point she accuses him of raping her. So I guess maybe not. I mean, I assume she believes that, which I can't remember. Did that happen?
Well, I don't remember a tremendous amount from season 2 without having to go back and read it, but picking up context clues and what we know about David, I get the distinct impression that they had sex at least once under David's mental influence.
Okay, all right. Then we probably talked about that.
Yeah.
When we discussed that in the season, and so yeah, you can't blame her for being a little pissed. Can't blame her.
No means no, even when you make me say yes.
That's right. Gets a little blurry with the old telekinesis, telepathy influence there.
Right.
So
so I think that's where she's coming from with this. I think it's the realization. I know by the end of season 2, which is how we got to season 3, is that they all realized just how powerful and how dangerous David was, and that he needed to be either controlled or he needed to be destroyed. Mm-hmm. Which really does tie in well with X-Men Legacy.
Agreed. All right.
Hey, everybody. I really do hope you love the Rattlegion Broadcasting Network. Did you know that you can actually get paid just for listening to this podcast? I know it sounds insane, but it's true. We just discovered this free new app called Podcoin, and it literally pays you to listen to podcasts. Here's how it works. You listen to podcasts, and you earn Podcoin while you listen. Then you turn that Podcoin in for gift cards at places like Amazon or Starbucks, or if you're a good person, you could even donate that Podcoin to charity. The more you listen, the more you earn. Here's what you do. Download the app right now on iPhone or Android, and I have a special code for you. Simply use our code MARKWED5. That's capital M-A-R-K-W-E-D 5. Capital M-A-R-K-W-E-D 5. MARKWED5. And you'll get 300 Podcoin just for signing up. And if you listen to enough of us on there, you can get a cappuccino at Starbucks or an Amazon gift card on us. So go ahead and go listen to this podcast or virtually any podcast on Podcoin and sign up with code MARKWED5. I swear it'll change the way you listen to podcasts. All right, we had to take a momentary pause for the cause, but we are back. We're going to move on here, talk about episodes 4, 5, and 6. So, Jesse, episode 4, as a result, I'm just going to read this from the wiki. As a result of David and Switch's meddling, time itself becomes unstable, resulting in time loops for both David's cult and Division 3. It attracts some time demons.
Oh, yeah.
The time demons attack David, and he awakens in a concentration camp next to his mother, but it's an illusion. Others are tortured by the illusions when Sid comes across a younger version of herself, and Lenny being forced to witness the rapid birth, aging, and death of her daughter. Carrie breaks free from David's mind control, and he escapes David's facility with Switch. And David eventually scares the time demons away, but is enraged by Switch's escape, which then causes him to hijack the Division 3 bus. This is episode 5. And just fucking murders people.
Yeah, buddy. He like, I don't know if he liquefies or he does some pretty bad stuff, especially to those androids. And then he wipes out one dude's brain. So go ahead.
He mind wipes Clark's husband.
Yeah, Clark, you'll remember, is the guy that he first met from Division 3, and he scarred half his face.
Yeah. So he mind wipes Daniel, who was Clark's husband, to learn where Switch is, and turns out she's aboard the airship. Lenny, distraught from her ordeal with the time demons, blames David for her distress and commits suicide in front of him.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Carrie builds a hibernation chamber for Switch to hide her from David. Autonomy, or robot Autonomy, suggests that traveling to outer space to get out of David's teleportation range, and Division 3 agrees, against the wishes of the Shadow King, who wants to face David directly. Yeah, this
not a good plan, by the way.
Not go well at all.
Nope.
Farouk intentionally provokes David, who discovers their location because the Shadow King is a big sissy pansy. Do my plan. No, fine. I'll just get you all killed. How about that? Yeah. I'm taking my ball and killing you all. David teleports his cult to the airship, and they kill Clark by throwing him into space, because that seems to be the fun thing to do in Hollywood now. Yep. David contacts Sid, who gives up Switch's location, and he vows to change the past and undo everything. Sid tricks him into allowing her to use her powers to make them swap bodies. However, David's other personalities, who refer to themselves as Legion, manage to overpower Sid as they bring David back to his body and wipe Sid's mind to prevent her from swapping bodies again. He retrieves Switch, who then traps Farouk in the space between time. David and Switch once again travel.
Cool visual.
Yes. David and Switch once again travel to the past, with David stating he now has a new plan, and then we take yet another time out for love, Dr. Jones. Mm-hmm. And we follow Sid, who is in the astral plane.
Oh, yeah, this is a different episode.
So this whole...
We got to bring back...
Yeah.
We bring back a couple people from the first 2 seasons, if I remember correctly, that we hadn't seen all of Season 3. So go ahead.
So this astral plane episode, just a quick recap. I don't have to read. Basically, Sid's mind starts out as a baby, and it evolves into an other version of herself. She is raised by I forget who.
Oliver and Melanie.
Oliver and Melanie, yeah, a version of their astral selves, like raise her. You have the one boyfriend from Brooklyn Nine-Nine who is the wolf.
Did you tell her about chlamydia?
There's a lot of world building going on in this astral plane setting, but the whole thing is sort of a tale about Sid finding herself and rebuilding her mind and becoming a better version of herself to go and confront David. It kind of takes you out of the action for a bit, and we're kind of into a little side story here, but it all comes down to Sid knowing what she has to do, and so they end up going. Sid, Carrie, and Kerry travel back in time to go after David.
Yep.
Let's stop there. So like I said, we have the bit with the time demons being introduced and all, and the sense of tension that they represent. You have the whole bit with David coming aboard the ship, killing all kinds of people, mind wiping Sid, and retrieving Switch and going back in time. And then you have the astral plane episode. Jesse, what do your notes tell you?
I found my notes, ladies and gentlemen. They weren't lost, never. I went back in time and got them and found them. Here we go. I want to quickly stop and tell you the most.
One sec. Hey, Jesse.
Yes,
why
sir.
don't you make like a tree and get out of here?
Make like a tree and leave, you damn fool. You always get it wrong. I have to tell you about the most frightening moment this whole season hit me with on episode 3. All right, I know we've bumped past that, but I've got to talk about this real quick. Do you remember when little baby David was laying in the crib and was crying incessantly, and his mom got up to go get him, and the Shadow King was nearby, I guess, and she goes to pick him up because he's laying on his stomach in the crib, and she turns him over and proceeds to see the back of his head again, and then turns him over, and then it's continually the back of this poor little baby's head. You never see the front of it. So she's like continually flipping the baby over, trying to find the baby's face. That was the most horrifying thing I'd seen in a while. Very scary, very scary. All right, now let's head to episode 4, where my notes start out such as, oh yes, temporal glitch, where everything is kind of like skipping and kind of just, you could tell there's something wrong. At first you're like, oh, something's wrong with the signal on my satellite. No, that's not the case. It's the actual way that they filmed this, which I thought was really neat. That was, again, a fantastic visual storytelling going through here. What you have to do is you have to get across that there are these demons that are kind of in between time. And so a normal person may just have somebody dress up as a demon and go after these people. But the way that they animate these things, where it's almost like you can only see them in between the seconds, the second ticks on a clock, and they're just, every time, the only time you don't see them move, they're completely always, every time you see them, they're paused in the movement that they're going to do. Very scary and a great way of getting that across to the person that's watching it. So I like that. Let's see here. Yeah, like I said, visual storytelling was deep. And then when Sid has the discussion with her younger self about love, I thought that was really compelling. You said that I imagine your big problem was probably the astral plane episode. Did that drag it down for you?
No, believe it or not. I know why you're saying that, because I have a fairly lengthy history of what the fuck is this. Let's stick with the meat and stop telling and stop doing, entire episodes of gravy. But I actually I kind of needed the break, and I think it was a story worth telling. I think the other side of that is that episode was propped up by some stellar acting, and then there's a fucking rap battle.
To which you messaged me, oh, this fucking rap battle.
But it was hilarious, I mean, it was well done. Like the people who work on this show.
If I remember right, season 2 they had a dance off. That was kind of, it was either season 2 or season 1, where it was David versus Farouk, and there was a fucking dance off to kind of show their battle at that point in time. I don't think that was the big battle. That was something before that, or maybe it led up to it. But again, such an interesting way to kind of get across. These two are fighting practically for life and death. Let's do a rap battle to kind of show the fight. Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, like, it was fun the way they did it.
Yeah.
And I loved how it ended because, like, he really goes after the wolf, Oliver does, and the wolf, like, you hurt my feelings, but you and and I'm not gonna, let me lead here because you think
Sure.
I'm gonna go one way, but I'm not. So let me just
I'll stay
hold
quiet.
you. Okay. You and I were talking about pet peeves offline. And I revealed to you there are certain things that really irk me in a very personal way. One of those things is the undeserving boyfriend. The type where they're a piece of garbage and they don't deserve the girl that they're with, but they know how to play the strings on that girl so well that the girl just stays with them, even though everybody and especially you can see they're just a piece of shit.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That's
the wolf.
That's the wolf.
Yeah.
Oh, that is a deeply personal pet peeve of mine. It bleeds right into my sense of justice.
Oh yeah.
That people should get what they deserve based on the kind of person they are. And hey, look, it's one thing to make a joke about Evil Dick going into Sid's ass. It's another thing to be a bag of dicks.
Yeah, to completely mean it, and yeah, exactly.
So, and he does it. He plays on Cynthia's, who's a drug. I love her introduction, by the way. This is Cynthia. She's utterly given up hope.
Yeah, the astral plane's so weird, man. So fucking, it's a weird show, dude. It's just so out there, and the concept, it's such an abstract concept that, people show up there. That's why Sid was there, because people who had lost their way or lose their mind end up on the astral plane. So right. Cynthia, who is apparently her mind has gone a long time ago. That's why she's there. But yeah, she's so malleable, I guess you would say. That
sure.
The wolf is like got her, at first he's like, here she is, this is kind of like his new side piece.
Right. She's utterly bereft of self-worth.
Exactly. And it's immediately Oliver and Melanie recognize that, and they're like, hey, why don't you stay here? And they look at the wolf and like, you're staying outside. But yeah, they bring her in and raise her along with Sid, which is makes of course that's a big kind of a plot in the story where Sid grows up with the sister who ends up turning around and goes right back to the wolf.
Right.
Cynthia's unfortunately lost her way again.
And the moral of that whole story was that Sid learns that there's some people you just can't save.
Yeah.
Some people need to be destroyed. That's the lesson at least she's being taught, and she needs to be taught that in order to confront David. It gives her the strength to confront this insurmountable, all-powerful being who she has feelings for, but realizes is too dangerous to remain who he is. And it's so funny because we really, this year, we've run across a lot of shows that turn conventional comic storytelling on its head in television. And I keep going, and I think if somebody asked me at the end of the year, how would you sum up television this year? It's Alan Tudyk saying, now we're here for the punchy part.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Which doesn't happen. All kinds of nutty stuff happens at the end of Doom Patrol, and we talked about that earlier this year. But it was that sense of calling out the conventional nonsense. Look, we all love the end of Avengers Endgame. It was a gratifying release of comic semen.
Okay.
We all
bring your kids, ladies and gentlemen.
We all rained semen down in the theater. 22
I was not in that theater.
22. Yes, you were. 22 films later, after building up all that intensity and just Avengers Assemble, and you look like
I'm spent.
You look like Mr. Marsh from South Park after he's finished all over himself. You ever see that?
Oh no, I haven't. I can I can just picture it. How's that? Don't send me any pictures. Don't send me any images.
It's a big meme. I can find it for you
Okay.
really easily.
No, that's fine. That is fine.
Google Randy Marsh semen.
All right, Ben. Get right on that.
But that's what. Okay. So like my point. Anyway.
No, I won't.
Last
point is-
day under
No,
Jesse
no.
Starcher. Anyway.
No. Damn it.
The point is that while there's that conventional storytelling and release and people being satisfied, there's shows like Doom Patrol and Legion and a couple of other ones that we've talked about this year where the final confrontation, and this to a degree had some action to it, and we'll talk about this in a few minutes, David's battle with the Shadow King, at least in part, results in him singing a song.
Yeah, we'll talk about that here in a few. It was an interesting way to end it. Can I, real quick, I want to take it back to the power of David Haller, the power of Legion here. Okay,
Yeah.
So, what we kind of get, definitely in episode 4, is an idea of the power that Legion has. Now, we know, leading up to season 3, we know that David is a very, very powerful being. Now, when time travel gets involved here, and we have the time demons, who almost like, they seem unstoppable. These things, there's a showdown between David and like 3 of these demons. And it's on the astral plane, I would assume, but he has them there, they're looking at him, and they're laughing. That was creepy. Every time they moved, or did something, there was always this kind of like evil cackle that they had. Like they knew shit you didn't know. And that was exactly what David was having to deal with. So he sees these 3 demons and walks toward them. And over, time gets reset right before he reaches them. They reset time and send him back 10 steps. And it's like, it continues over and over and over. So you're like, how the hell is he going to beat him? Where is he going to get this power from? Well, sure enough, David Haller has the power to do this. And he fucking lights one of them on fire. And then he tells them, he's like, if you like, I wish I could remember the quote. It was something like, I hear you like to eat time, because every time these demons would come across something, it would, progressively fast forward time. We talked about Lenny, and I think it was Lenny in this episode, where she is with one of the cult members, they're a couple. She's pregnant. She's going to be a mom. And this time demon speeds things up for her on an unbelievable level to where she sees her daughter, I think it was, her daughter gets born, her daughter becomes a toddler, her daughter becomes, so all that gets sped up. Anyway, before we hop into that part of things, David finally is like, if you like to eat time, how about this? How about you eat shit? And then he just proceeds to do the Doctor Strange thing where he grows like 9 arms. Every single one of them has a middle finger turned to the demons, and then he tells them basically to go fuck themselves. And at that point, all of the time demons know that they're dealing with something on a level that they do not understand, and they're scared. So the point of that is that by the end of episode 4, David Haller is extremely powerful. He's coming into, more power than he's ever known. And then by the end of episode 4, he's like, we're going to war. And he's declaring war on Division 3. And of course, we open up episode 5 where he's just laying everybody out. He's killing the android people that are on that bus, and he's trying to find Switch. I didn't catch it, but I didn't realize that David, until we saw that, I didn't realize that David had tricked Carrie into working for him. I saw him go get him from Division 3, and he brought him in there, but I was like, man, Carrie's working with him awful, he's awful chummy with Legion here. And then what you realize is that to the point where we were making on the Source Material podcast, Legion, David is definitely showing signs of villainy here. The manipulation, the quest for power, the quest for changing things and making things his own way. That part where Carrie realized that he'd been manipulated and mind tricked into working for David to, further those powers was, it was sad to kind of realize, oh crap, I'm rooting for the villain now.
Yeah, it's funny. In the episode 4, during one of the unstable time loops, it actually cuts to an episode of The Shield.
Yeah, and I thought there was something wrong with my TV because this is a way of them visually. I think it's a way of them engaging with the viewer and making them feel something that they're like, oh, am I on the? What's going on? FX forgot to load the episode or something.
Well,
and all of a sudden, I'm in the middle of the episode of The Shield.
I brought that up because when Pat and I talked about Lights Out, we talked about the main character being. With the exception of, I think, what's his face from Justified, like we were talking about that FX is one of the commonalities of FX is the leading male in a lot of their series are shitty people, and you find yourself conflicted because while you want to root for, all right, get your bingo cards out, everybody, like the Wire, you want to root for McNulty, but you ultimately know that McNulty's also a shitty person. And so there's a conflict within the viewer that is produced by the main character's behavior.
Good point. Yep.
And FX has a really good track record of producing. Like Mackie is like one of by far the worst.
That shit's. Now I'm starting to realize they did that shit obviously on purpose.
Yeah.
Putting that Shield episode in there because that really relates to what you're talking about.
That's why
in
I
this
brought
show.
it up. So, I can't remember the character's name in Justified, but he wasn't necessarily a shitty person, but that was kind of the point of the show, was he murders people, but he does so from the point of being a protector. And I don't mean murder like Dexter. I mean, he's a ranger or whatever the hell he is, marshal, who shoots people in the line of duty. But but he gets questioned because he's doing it with alarming frequency. Have you ever watched Justified?
No, I haven't. I've heard you and I think Gavin talked about it a couple times.
Gavin and Pat fucking beat off to that show.
Oh, well, then.
Speaking
of semen.
Speaking of semen. And it's a great show. I watched it. I binged it a few years ago, and it lives up to the hype. I can't remember what other show we were talking about on FX that had the conflicting heel lead.
Is it Dexter?
No, that was Showtime.
Okay.
The Wire was HBO.
Was it Game of Thrones?
HBO.
Oh, damn.
Come on.
3 for 3 here. 0 for 3. Well, yeah, I don't know, man.
I don't watch Sons of Anarchy, but I think that got brought up as well.
Okay, all right.
That was the other big one on FX. Not FX, but kind of similar situation. AMC's Breaking Bad.
Okay, yeah.
Walter being another person who you're sympathetic because he, I think, at heart is a good guy, and he has cancer. And who wants to root against a guy who's suffering with cancer, who's just trying to pay his medical bills? But then he's the fucking He is the one who knocks.
Fucking Heisenberg, yeah. He is the one who knocks.
Yeah, he becomes just, as Mr. Burns would say, wallowing in his own crapulence. So anyway, the point of all that is that they did a really good job of making David one of those people. Mm-hmm. Because on the one hand, David has a noble goal of eliminating the timeline in which so much pain has been suffered by him and others.
Yeah.
On the other hand, the road to getting there, he hurts everybody around him.
Yeah, he kills. I remember when he's talking to Sid and he's like, "We're Switch," and she tells him, and then she asks him, "Did you have to kill anybody?" He's like, "Or did you kill everybody?" And he's like, He kind of shook his head. The thing is that killing's all right for him because he knows everything is going to get undone when he gets there.
Right.
So,
well, it doesn't matter. The ends
you know?
justify the means. He's
exactly.
He's an absolutely amoral person.
Agreed. Yeah, we have the other moment in that in those couple episodes, and we can move on, but they have that heartfelt discussion between David and Sid where you're like, oh, okay, well, maybe they actually can, put something aside, or maybe she can actually touch David's heart. But what she ends up doing is taking her glove off and touching his cheek and taking over his body. And I was like, oh, damn, here we go. Nice play. Because I thought I was buying into it, Mark. I thought, oh, she's really serious here. She's actually, she's actually going to try and reach out to him and change his mind on what he's doing. And by then, people had died. And I was like, man, if he changes his mind now, it's a broken character. We've had that discussion on source material where we have characters who have taken things so far, are they considered broken? Well, if he would have changed his mind at that point, there would have been a lot of stuff that you could file under this character is now broken because they've gone to these lengths. But regardless, she makes her play and tricks everybody and switches bodies with David. But obviously that all comes to naught because Sid goes into the astral plane after getting attacked by all those legions inside of his head. But she's able to come back, and we already talked about her journey there. So, but yeah, David and Switch grab David gets Switch, and they both head back into the past while I think he's leaning over Sid's unconscious body, and it's like, look, I'll make it right. I'll change it. So out they go. So back to the past.
One second, I want to. So they don't really have a lot of characters from the comic books in this show. They have Legion. They introduced Professor X, Gabrielle Xavier, who was introduced in the comics, and the Shadow King. But like Sid, I get this.
I was gonna say I don't recognize her as a character at all.
No, she. And there's
I don't recognize Carrie. I don't recognize Lenny. I don't recognize a lot of that. Now, granted, we're not the greatest Legion scholars, but I think that the stuff that we've read 2 volumes of that one of the 2013 series, and none of that's showing up. The themes are the same, though. Some of the themes are definitely the same.
Well, I like to use the wiki links as a to see whether or not this person was actually in the comics. They're usually pretty good about that.
Mm-hmm.
And like none of these characters have links to anything. When they are, there is a link there. Like the Shadow King has a link.
Yes.
But like when I look at Sid, there's no link here. The character is named after Roger Sid Barrett of the rock band Pink Floyd, whose music was an important influence on the series.
Absolutely. That's for sure in that last episode.
So, but here's my question to you, just kind of off to the side for a moment. I'm wondering if in development, and I don't know if this is true or not, I'm just kind of shooting the breeze at this point. I'm wondering if in development they actually wanted Rogue in this role.
The power set seems very similar.
Yeah, that's why I said that. Like, the way they use her powers, it seems like Rogue would have been a good fit here, and they were like, no, that's the one broad from the movies, and these are supposed to connect to that. Like, this show is in that universe.
Yeah.
So you can't use Rogue. And so they just basically developed a character similar to Rogue, minus the Southern accent.
Mm-hmm. Do they have anything there for Carrie at all? Because
no.
Carrie, okay, I was going to say, Carrie has, I'm trying to think of a power set, or a character that has a similar power set. The only person that comes to mind is like Multiple Man, but that is nothing like what goes Carrie goes through in the show.
A whole other person's living inside of him that ages at a separate rate.
Yeah, and yeah, they can share. There was one interesting part there. I think it was in the second to last episode where female Carrie is trying to hold off those cultists that have come, and she gets the crap beat out of her. Mm-hmm. She doesn't die. But when they're trying to figure out what the next step would be, she looks at male Carrie and says, "Hey, I can't do this, barely walking." So they become one, and then she shares her pain. Mark Radlich, yell it, scream it.
I couldn't help but notice your pain. Share it with me.
and her injuries with the mail carry, and then she comes out unscathed, but he's fucking wheelchair bound and beat to shit.
Yeah.
So I've never seen. I cannot think for the life of me. There probably is something out there like that that's in the Marvel universe in the comics, but I thought that was very unique. If it's not, that's very unique when it comes to.
She's running around with a fucking samurai sword.
Yep.
And so, like, I think the obvious low-hanging fruit is like Silver Samurai, but that's about the only comparison.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah, I couldn't even. I mean, Psylocke maybe. I don't know.
Psylocke maybe, but the whole switching body thing. However, I mean, the closest thing you can get is to where Psylocke did go through a transformation at one point where she did get her mind put into the Asian Psylocke, the one you're thinking of with the sword. She was never like that before. She was kind of a.
She was like fucking Raven from the Teen Titans.
Yes, yeah, there you go. But again, not sharing. She definitely wasn't sharing two bodies and couldn't separate themselves. So I don't know, man. But I see where you're going with the Sid thing. I definitely got a Rogue vibe when I was first watching this series. I was like, I wonder if that was what their plan was. But nothing else other than Shadow King, Legion, and Professor X and Gabriella. That's it.
Yep.
I can't think of anything else.
Certainly not Lenny.
No, I didn't see her coming from a mile away either. So.
Aubrey Plaza there. All right. If there's nothing else about these 3 episodes, unless we're going to rap battle, let's move on.
Oh,
I challenge
and
you.
the last rap that he won on was not good. I don't think it was good, Mark. I'm just saying.
Well, he didn't really rap. He just was like, "You're a shitty person, and here's all the reasons why." Nobody loves you.
None of them rhyme.
Yeah. No, nobody loves you. You're an unwanted piece of fucking animal shit. And then he's like, "You hurt my feelings," and the dumb girl is like, "Oh, he's so sensitive." That's the sound of a dick going in her throat.
Oh, damn. Wow. Missed that part of the episode.
Yeah, where she blew him right there in
Storytelling.
front of everybody. It's there. They just cut it because it's FX.
Cutting room floor.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, I don't have anything else on this.
I really enjoy this guy's podcast, but sometimes he just says something and it's so cringy. We know, people. We know.
We know. Yeah, I like the Time Demons. I thought that was neat. When they got stuck, when Carrie and the two was it 2 Carries? Anyway, I know it was Farouk and Carrie, and maybe it was Sid was stuck in the time between time. I thought that was a great way of getting that across. How that was told, like it was all still images with texts, and then the next was a still image with text. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty cool stuff.
Great way of doing it. But let's get into 7 and 8.
Yeah, so our final 2 episodes, the end of the beginning, the end is the beginning is the end, and the end of the end. Or something like
sure.
that.
That goes.
All right, so the last 2 episodes basically are David ends up going back in time. He meets his dad, and he's basically there to tag team with his dad against the Shadow King, but the past version of the Shadow King, the one that's going to inevitably possess David and destroy his life. But as it turns out, future Shadow King finally gets out of the time between time, and they end up kind of having a face-off. It's young Shadow King versus David, and then past Professor X in that time, present, I guess, which is what, the late 40s, early 50s. If this is after World War.
Dude, if you're trying to fucking put a time frame on what you see on the screen versus what is actually going on, good luck.
It has to have been after World War II because his wife's a Holocaust survivor.
Okay, all right, I'll agree with that. Which would make Legion what? Is this show supposed to take place in the 70s?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So then that would make sense as to why Legion is probably about 20, 25 years old. So that would probably be in the 50s, maybe late 40s at the latest.
Yeah.
That's when this is going on.
So, long story short, it's too late. So let's assume this is the early 50s, and because you figure they didn't go home and have a baby right away.
Yeah.
And then there's that time they spent in the asylum. Let's assume that's more than 20 minutes.
Sure.
So at the time of this, and then he has to build Cerebro and all of that. So yeah, we'll go with the early 50s here. 50s, just so I get my people right. 50s Professor X kind of pairs off with 70s contemporary Shadow King, and then 50s Shadow King squares off with 70s David.
Yep.
And just sticking with David and the Shadow King for a second, they kind of have a back and forth thing going on. It gets very physical. David's at one point just pounding the shit out of him. I guess he fought back at one point, and David ended up in a straitjacket, and then he started singing a song, and then at the end of the song, he somehow resists and reverses, and he takes down the Shadow King, and then he starts ground and pounding. While that's happening, Professor X, feeling okay, well, this guy's malevolent, and he hurt my son, so I guess I gotta fight this guy. But his nature is in communication. This is very Professor X. Yep. We've been talking about Onslaught, and coming this Monday on the Source Material podcast is Onslaught Volume 2?
3. No, 2. You're right.
I thought so.
Yep. Time travel, ladies and gentlemen.
I haven't read Volume 3 yet.
We're recording 3. We're releasing 2. Yes.
Shut up. Stop telling about the sausages made. So anyway, in the Onslaught book, and to a degree this is covered in X-Men Legacy as well, one of the defining characteristics of Professor X is he feels like through communication there will be peace. And he's just surrounded by people who is some men you just can't reach. So you do what we did here last week, which is the way he wants.
He won't.
Well, he gets it. That's a Guns N' Roses reference,
yes,
everybody. Which is
I don't need no Civil War.
Which is obviously referencing an old Western movie, presumably.
Some kind of movie.
Yeah. Anyway, but in all seriousness, Professor X is just surrounded by people who is you're not going to get to everybody. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you have to use your fists, and I think that's David's message to him. It's you came to this. This podcast is full of movie references. Captain Kirk was your host, and you treated his friendship by trying to murder him. You know what I'm doing?
Captain Kirk? Well, is this going to be this is definitely a Star Trek reference. Is it going to be Wrath of Khan?
You're absolutely right.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah,
I had 7 chances to get that right, I think.
when Chekhov and what's his face land on City Alpha 5.
Oh, okay.
And they discover Khan.
The earworm.
Right.
The earworm shortly afterwards.
It's that scene.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah.
And, what's funny is we get earworms in this fucking episode because he reaches into his ear, remember, and he pulls out shit.
Yep. It's a reverse earworm thing. But yes.
Interesting.
David, much like Chekhov in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, he says to Charles, he says, you came to him in friendship, and he was just using you, and he wanted to hurt you, and when he couldn't do that, he hurt me, and this is an opportunity to make it right and get revenge. Justice must be served. And he really has a heck of a time getting Charles to buy into that.
It's true.
But eventually he does, out of, I think, fucking guilt, because it's I don't think David ever wins the moral argument. He guilts Charles into it by saying, oh, and by the way, your reaction to this, you piece of shit, is you give me up for adoption because you don't know what else to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Charles well, I can't live with myself knowing that.
Well, I mean, it's a hell of a thing to put something like that on somebody. I mean, you imagine if somebody did actually come back and you realize that they were a time traveler, they were your son, and they told you, this moment is going to cause you to do something that you would never fathom that you could do.
Right.
So at that point, Charles Xavier's probably willing to go to any lengths to stop this from happening. Hence, he uses words a lot of times to win his battles. But when Legion talks to him or David talks to him, Professor X whips out a fucking gun, pulls a bullet out of his ear.
Right.
And you're like, well, shit, okay.
So he goes to confront the Shadow King, and the Shadow King's like, this is dumb.
Yeah, contemporary Shadow King has went through some shit, and he's learned a lot.
Yeah.
He's learned a lot.
He's like, this is dumb. Let's take the gun and turn it into booze, and let's just talk.
Let's have a drink, and we'll talk about
it.
And
it's kind of like, I know I was a shitty person back in the 50s, and I've learned to not be a shitty person, and so maybe there's a way to avoid the inevitable path that brings us to this point.
Mm-hmm. And that's great. That is a great message, because I didn't expect it to go that way at all. At the end of episode 7, when, contemporary or present Farouk shows up, I was like, oh shit, those two are going to team up, and we're going to have a battle on the grandest stage of them all, WrestleMania Astral Plane.
Yeah, this was a regular Hulk Hogan and Mr. T versus Paul Orndorff and Roddy Piper. I'll be
damn sure it was. But yeah, that's what I was expecting. And then they completely turn that on its ear and show you that people can change. And that's a big message. You can
change, and I can change, we all can change, Jesse.
That's right. That is right.
How many references to other shit have we made tonight?
Keep count, ladies and gentlemen. Take a drink for every one of them and let us know.
And then we'll pay for your alcohol poisoning hospital bill.
Yeah, do it. So, yeah, you see right there that it's taken this long for this character, who was, helping out Division 3, but at one point in this series was considered one of the most ultimate evils and one of the most powerful evils out there, has now changed and is starting to get along with Professor X. I was waiting for the swerve, but it doesn't happen. So we have the other side of the battle, which is happening between past Farouk, who is definitely evil. There's no doubt about that. And then we have Legion. And one of the coolest visual effects, you mentioned it, was the straitjacket, where I think it's right at the end of his singing of Mother by Pink Floyd, by the way. At the end of that, he rips the straitjacket off, and as he's ripping it off, it flies off of his body, and it lands in front of him, but it lands as Farouk, which I thought was pretty fucking cool. That was neat to see. And he's able to overcome, Farouk in this battle. And then what is it? Is it where... I can't remember how it gets resolved. Does Xavier and, present Farouk show up, and they're like, hey, let's figure out a way to do this a different way.
Yeah, after using Gabrielle as inspiration, David escapes the straitjacket that Farouk puts him in and tells him he's a bad person and all of that. In the midst of a ground and pound, they stop him from killing him, and they were basically like, don't do this. This just only cements the fact that you're a bad person.
True. Yeah, exactly.
That the need for justice should not be tantamount to the need to create an eye for an eye.
That's right. And Farouk, present Farouk, gives past Farouk those glasses and shows him everything that's happened. We almost get like this sped up montage of what's happened over the past 2 seasons, 2.5, 3 seasons, or whatever. And, past Farouk is rather repentant here. He's very sorry for what he turns into. So he agrees to... I can't remember what the hell the plan is, but he obviously doesn't...
The plan is they're going to leave each other alone.
Okay, all right. So he decides not to do what he's going to do.
Basically, I don't know... I don't remember exactly why Farouk fights Charles Xavier, but I know that the intention was to draw Professor X in and then, either take his power or overwhelm him or whatever the story was.
Probably find I don't know. I would assume the Shadow King's got to find a new host. That's my guess, because obviously when Charles first shows up there, which I think that's what happens in season 3, at least we get a little bit of a glimpse of it. He finds out that Farouk exists, and he travels halfway across the world to go meet this guy, because he's person that has similar power to him. Mutants weren't all over the place at that point. It wasn't the 90s, ladies and gentlemen. Mutants weren't everywhere.
And they all didn't
Okay?
have coats of many pockets.
Yeah, and bad posture and big boobies, as Mark Radulich would say. But, he reaches out to Farouk, but Farouk's known about him this whole time.
Right.
And the Shadow King, I think, that's what, it's kind of like the evil eye. No one can escape its sight. Can I do a Lord of the Rings reference now?
Nice. Well done.
But anyway, nothing escapes his sight, the Shadow King's sight, and that's where he sees the power that lies in Legion, and then proceeds to gravitate and go into Legion. And that's what I didn't understand going into this was how the Shadow King, becoming part of David, almost grew up with him as a son. And that's mentioned in this final episode, which is this last episode. So for such a dark and weird series, it's so positive. There's a lot of positive things that come out of this. Yeah, there's going to be some crazy whacked out battles, and again, a couple songs might be sung, but at the end of the day, after these four come together and come to an agreement, the only thing that comes out of it is positive. And we do have a change to, at least the intention is to have a change to the future. That it's going to happen. So now go ahead and tell, I don't know if you've said anything about it yet or not, but, after the battle, we watched things change. Go ahead.
Yeah, so, while this is, if this is too esoteric and weird for you, there is a punchy part. You have Carrie, sword-wielding Carrie, and Sid, who are fighting time demons. Eventually, Switch becomes the powerful time traveler she was always meant to be, and she goes down there before she ascends to the fourth dimension, or whatever it is she's doing, with dear old Pop. She goes down there, she defeats the time demons, she saves Sid and now a very, very elder Carrie. And she tells Sid, hey, David's going to, in this new timeline that David's creating by virtue of you all being here, you're going to do very well. Just let it happen. And so the bottom line is that the show ends with Charles reconciling with Gabrielle, the Shadow King just letting the Xavier family exist. Whatever it is he's going to do in the world, he's not fucking with this family anymore.
Yeah.
So now David doesn't get put up for adoption or gets possessed by a demon. He gets to just grow up. So maybe he has schizophrenia, maybe he doesn't.
It's true. We don't know.
But contemporary David and contemporary Sid, after a final goodbye and to a degree a resolution that kind of says, things got shitty, but in the end it all kind of worked out, and we'll see where the next life takes us.
Yeah. One of the last things that Sid says to David is something along the lines of, whatever happens, you got to promise me one thing. And she says, be a good boy.
Yeah.
and they both kind of laugh and fade away as they're sitting above the little baby David Holler's crib.
Right. And that's it. There's no extra scene. There's no nothing. It just show ends.
Nope. That's it. That is it. That's the way that the series ends. And man, I got to tell you, I really am going to kind of miss this show. As much as season 2 kind of felt like it was filler for me, I think that there were way more elements of the visual storytelling that made me go, damn, this is something different. This is something that you don't see on TV all the time. You just don't see it. And I think the vision of Legion is what really drew us to it in the first place. Actually, the fact that it was a Marvel property, was probably my first thing. Oh shit, they're going to do a show on Legion. And then we get into the way that they told the tales on the screen was just unbelievable.
There's a lot of complaints about Marvel movies being kind of cooked up by committee and served as fast food to the masses. And there's an argument there. There's an argument in kind of a structural math that works, to the tune of billions and billions of dollars. But they don't have much of a soul, so they're successful and they're crowd pleasing and they're entertaining. But so's fucking Reese's peanut butter cups. And it's like, okay, so these don't have a tremendous amount of gravitas, weight to them. And so Marvel, so if you're just looking at the movies, Marvel has this reputation of being candy. It's candy everybody wants. But where Marvel is successful at being an IP that creative people can use to tell interesting stories that don't have to be successful in the movie milieu is the television product. Because when you look at across the board, like let's look at the low end, the lowest end being the Inhumans, which was hot garbage, and then Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So you have the ABC approach to it, which is more closer to the movies than it is the rest of the television properties. You know, it's like, okay, we've created these sort of mass appeal, attempting to be mass appeal in the case of the Inhumans, these sort of mass appeal, made-for-TV Marvel properties that we want to draw big ratings on a specific television night. And then you look at, like, The Runaways, which is a Hulu exclusive, and Cloak and Dagger, which was on Freeform, and Legion.
You know, we've never talked about The Gifted. Or is it The Gifted or Gifted? What is? I can't think. It's The Gifted.
It was The Gifted.
The Gifted. I don't think we've ever talked about that on here, but it is another property. I don't think I've watched a stitch of it, but that's out there.
I would say it's closer to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Inhumans than it is this other stuff. It was definitely broad appeal, kind of a Fox melodrama with people who have mutant powers.
Okay.
It was fairly well done. It got canceled because it's Fox and they got bought by Disney, and so all the shit has to come to an end so it can be rebooted. But so you know, we've talked about Runaways, we've talked about Cloak and Dagger, we've talked about Legion. There's all these opportunities to interpret the Marvel IP in fun and interesting and out of this world ways. So so they were successful with that with Cloak and Dagger, which we said was a weird show. But it's not the punchy parts. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Legion, which was interpreted in fun and creative ways. We didn't always get it, but that's okay. I don't mind being confounded by a show every once in a while. Not everything has to be Modern Family.
I got a question. I was going to say, I got a question. All right. So do your best, and you don't have to go through everything, but do your best to think of some of the top actors, actresses that are the front people for Marvel television. Okay? So you've got, well, here you go. You got Kristen Ritter as Jessica Jones. Right. You got the guy who plays Punisher, which, hey, guess what? I can't remember his name now for some reason. Why in the world can't I remember his name?
Just so I can finish the thought, let me say, I think
absolutely.
at the low, and then we'll get back to this. At the low end, at the sort of mass appeal, closer to the movies end, Inhumans, The Gifted, and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. At the high end, where I think you're dealing with real thoughtful and creative and interesting shows, you have Legion, Cloak and Dagger, and Runaways. And then right in the middle, that sort of just walks that line of the movies and the better television shows were your Netflix shows.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the group of them, by and large, with kind of Punisher and Daredevil being at the high end, Jessica Jones and Iron Fist being at the low end, and Luke Cage right smack in the middle. I think that's sort of that's the number line of sort of fast food to high-end quality Marvel television.
I'll agree with that. I will agree with that. So, yeah, John Bernthal, by the way. For the life of me, I kept going Thomas Jane, and that's not his name, because I know better.
That's a different Punisher.
And that's a different Punisher. Same character, wrong actor. So you have to think of, you know, the front men and women of some of these shows, and tell me where you think are, oh my goodness, our lead actor here, Dan Stevens. I'll call him David. Dan Stevens is at and portrayal of the Marvel character on screen. I'm going to go ahead and say that he is definitely top 5. I think his acting ability to show a person who is almost incurably insane is great. Lenny or Aubrey Plaza's Lenny is up there too. But we're talking about front men and women. So Dan Stevens is damn amazing as David Haller. I had no problem buying him as Legion, and I think that he deserves to be top 5 TV worthy character representation for Marvel. Where would you place him? Or if you could, would you say he's top 5? What do you think?
I don't disagree with top 5. I need to kind of think out loud about this.
Okay.
Because let's just kind of take each show one by one here.
Okay. Runaways is not, or Runaways, we'll keep that off the board since there's so many.
Well, I did want to bring that
think
up though, but I can kind of do it collectively because I have this. I can say the same thing about almost the entire cast.
Okay.
So like the Inhumans.
Bottom of the barrel. I've never seen it, but I know it can't be good.
I mean, I think the cast, for the most part, couldn't be blamed for how bad that show was. They tried. But the question, you're asking me how close to the comics do these performers get to the character of the character, right?
Well, you don't have to go by the comics themselves. I mean, just by what they're supposed to represent.
Okay.
I guess. I mean, obviously, Jessica Jones. She's supposed to be a hard-boiled private eye. We kind of get that from the series. Go ahead.
But and I guess that's the thing. That's why I kind of want to think out loud about this because I don't think the Inhumans was good, and I don't think their characterizations and acting was great. It's the worst out of all the Marvel shows. But that, but okay. And the sky is blue. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. The only character that's that's from the comics that I can recall are Quake and Yo-Yo, and I can't tell you if they're accurate comic representations or not.
I don't think they are. I haven't seen enough of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or either of those characters to definitely say for sure, but Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. seems more grounded and less superpowery to me, but I haven't watched any of the later seasons, so I don't know for
and that, well, yeah. And I didn't read the Robbie Reyes Ghost Rider, so I can't tell you how close he got to that.
Yeah.
Gabriel Luna. The Runaways, I think collectively they all do a good job of bringing the Brian K. Vaughan's comic to life.
Okay.
Now, you've read 2 volumes of it, and you've watched the show. So, I mean, any major disagreement with that?
Well, no. I can't say that I disagree with it. The thing is that none of those characters to me stand out like, holy shit, this guy has to go, or this girl has to run a gamut of emotions. Has to run. So I guess I'm factoring acting ability in there as well, and the role that they have to take on. Legion has to go through a lot of physical transformations when it comes to attitude and when it comes to just the role that he has to play. He's a person that is supposedly has all these multiple personalities. Granted, they really in season 3, 90% of the time you see one, which is David. But there are definitely scenes where there's more Davids. To me, he did a fantastic job acting and making you believe he was a character that had those issues, that had to was emotionally broken.
Right. I guess if you want a quick and dirty answer to your question, yeah, he's at the top along with the Netflix stars. Mm-hmm. They've all done categorically the best job of being their characters.
Danny Rand?
Yeah.
All right.
I don't have a major problem with his performance. I think that the problems with Iron Fist were either people didn't get the character or the people doing the show didn't interpret it to a lot of the comic fans' likings, but I think he was fine.
Okay.
But even if you say, I think everybody likes Daredevil, Punisher, and Kristen Ritter as Jessica Jones. I think people were kind of 50-50 on Luke Cage. I think people like that actor, and they like what he's representing in the show. Whether or not he's the best representation of comic book accurate Luke Cage is a little on the fence. Mm-hmm. So thinking about this, and then I wanted to bring this up. Cloak and Dagger, that is a wildly different interpretation of those comic book characters.
True. Yeah.
They are Cloak and Dagger kind of in name only. So to answer your question, they're more closer to the ABC stuff. Same thing with The Gifted, where I think they do an okay job of doing melodrama, but I don't know how accurate these are to the comic book characters, and they wholly invented some new ones on that show. So I would say, yeah, it's kind of what's his face as Daredevil, John Bernthal, and Dan Stevens as Legion.
I like hearing it.
And then Kristen Ritter is number 4.
I like it. I think that's definitely where I think he belongs. Mm-hmm. I think he belongs up there as one of the better actors that we've seen pull off one of the crazier characters in the Marvel Universe. And when you say crazy, it's you can take that both ways.
It's a tour de force of acting ability, if that's what you're getting at.
Yeah.
But I think look, did I love Legion? Is it my favorite show? No. But did I find it interesting? Do I think when people complain about the sort of the candy that is Marvel movies, and say like Marvel is just a hit factory, they're doing, it's boy bands and Taylor Swift and whatnot. I'm like, you gotta watch the television shows. That's where the real drama's at. You can't do Legion as a movie. No one will go see it.
There's no way.
And let's face it, even on TV, this season never did better than more than like 0.4 million viewers.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, the show did not do well. I think it was as low as 0.28, 0.27, and as high as it never got to a 4.
Do you think it was just too high concept, or just?
Yeah, for the dummies in this country, absolutely. The whole concept of like a sort of a psychedelic, Pink Floyd influenced, unreliable narrator show about a schizophrenic psionist. Mm-hmm. I don't think I could pitch that to anybody I work with, and before I got it all out of my mouth, they'd be fucking nerd and run away from me. People want to see fucking Jesse Starcher.
They do.
In the snow.
In the snow.
John, okay. I'm referencing Game of Thrones.
Oh, are you? Oh. I don't get that reference.
You don't watch Game of Thrones.
Fucking in the snow, fucking in the snow.
Fucking in the snow. HBO presents Fucking in the Snow.
A lot of people dropped off when Game of Thrones ended. They're going to regret it now. They're going to hop right back on it.
Please tune in to our HBO Game of Thrones spinoff, Fucking in the Snow.
Well,
that was the problem with Legion. Not enough fucking in the snow.
I agree.
But it had Evil Dick.
First thing I was complaining about. My first note.
Had gone into Sid's naked ass.
Well, ratings were best rated episode. Unreal.
FX FX not only would have the movies, but it would have all the ratings.
They would buy Marvel at that point.
Yes.
It was a crazy situation. I don't know what turned things around.
Somehow this Fox subsidiary would turn around and buy Disney. Sure.
All right. Well, Legion Season 3 was a lot of fun. I'm sorry to see it go. This is definitely, if I'm ranking the seasons myself, it'll probably go 1, 3, 2. That's probably how I would leave it as. But again, listen, if you are in the market for a trippy series with some fantastic visual storytelling elements. Stuff I guarantee you, there's stuff in these 3 seasons that you've never seen done on television before. Things that you would make you go, okay, that is a very unique way of getting that point across. And the way that they interact, I use the term interact loosely, but the way that they involve the viewer is an interesting. It just makes it that much more coveted, in my opinion. I think that's why I rate it up there, Mark. I say it's one of my favorite experiences here in the past 3 years was to be able to actually sit down and watch Legion, and I'm glad I got to get on here and talk about it with you.
Jesse, what are we going to do for the rest of the month? I mean, other than talking comic books and heavy metal, this is it. This is the last TV party for the month of September.
I had no idea. Oh, my goodness.
The next one that you're doing with me is BH 90210, and that's with Pat, and that's August.
Oh, I can't wait. Cannot wait to talk about that. I just watched an episode of that today.
But, yeah, unless you get all involved with something else we're doing here, this is it. Boo-hoo,
well,
Jesse. I only get to talk to you twice a week.
To all good things come an end, and that's all right. That is We've had our fair share. What was it, last week? We did like 7 podcasts together?
Yep.
6 out of 7 or something like that?
Yeah, no, you weren't sick of me at all. I'm gonna make it up to you in October.
Oh, really?
BH 90210, Pennyworth, Constantine, Doom.
I'm down. I keep forgetting about Doom. Doom's the movie, right? Is it a movie?
Yes, it's gonna be a direct to video.
All right, I'm all right with that.
I'm gonna go crazy in the month of October and make you watch with me.
Bare
Knuckle Fighting Championships 8.
Oh, please.
Bigfoot Silva versus Gabriel Gonzaga.
I'll just be sitting there yelling, "Why do they do this to each other? Stop hitting each other! So much blood."
Do you ever watch the Purge movies?
Yes.
You know the Purge.
I've watched the first one. I don't think I've watched the second one.
Did you watch last year's USA television show, The Purge?
USA Up All Night. No, I did not.
Well, Purge Season 2 starts October 15th.
Did you watch the first season?
I did.
Was it good?
I liked it. And I've never really watched any of the Purge movies before, but I thought, I wanted to give the TV show a shot because I think the concept of the Purge is interesting, and I actually ended up liking it. I was into the show.
A couple years ago, and tell me if this happens in the series, but a couple years ago, my daughter was wanting to watch those movies, and so she watched them, and she said, I would really like to watch a movie about what happens after, like the cleanup. I said, well, yeah, that'd be pretty interesting. So is that what they kind of focus on? Do they focus on any of that, or is it always like...
No,
the
it's like that. It's kind of like 24. It's that whole 24-hour period stretched over like 8 episodes.
They need to do like the epilogue, which is the day after the Purge, where everybody has to go back and do their own shit and deal with the fact that they just killed their boyfriend.
I mean, to a degree, that's dealt with. I mean, they kind of show you what happens to the characters after that in a particular night, like what happened when they were almost after they were almost killed, but. That's not the point of the show. The point of the show is to kind of show an ensemble to take an ensemble
trying to survive
cast and kind of follow their different stories and how they intersect and all of that.
Who's going to be the murderer? Who's going to do this? Yeah, okay. Well, I wish I could say I was interested. If I get a chance to watch any of it here, I might request that we do it, but please don't make me.
No. Beverly Hills, Pennyworth, Constantine, Doom, and then Lords of Chaos. I have you at least 3 times a week, every week in the month of October. So
I got you 3 times. 3 times.
Enjoy your respite.
Oh, I will. As a matter of fact, I will do it.
All right, I think we're done here, folks. Let's talk about September before we talk about October. In the archives now is Onslaught Volume 1, Hannibal Season 3, our coverage of this past weekend's wrestling events, New Japan Royal Quest, NXT UK TakeOver Cardiff, and AEW All Out. We did an extra special source material that led into tonight's Legion discussion. Saturday, We've got alternative coverage of Khabib versus Poirier. That's UFC 242. Onslaught Volume 2. It Chapter 2 review. Killswitch Engage Atonement. The Metal Hammer of Doom will be back. She-Ra Season 3. Bloodsport. Josh Barnett's Bloodsport 2. We've got it all on UHF.
We got it all. We got it all on UHF. All right. Anything else?
No, I don't. Like I said, I don't want to give too many plugs because I've learned that the minute I announce something, my entire schedule falls apart. People keep finding lives and other shit to do, so I'm pretty sure all of those will happen, though. How about that?
All right, very good. Well, I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, go give the Radulich in Broadcasting Network Facebook page a like to stay up on top of all the great podcasts that we have to offer. All sorts of great goodness going out there. Mark Radulich, he's joined me on source material many a time. You know, we're going through Onslaught Month, having a great time doing that, learning a lot about Professor X. If you ain't got enough about Professor X on the Legion, you can come and join us there on the source material podcast and learn when Professor X goes a little off the beaten path.
When Professor X turns into Terminator X.
Terminator X! He does, too. But, yeah, you can listen to me, Evan, and Chris Armstrong discuss, and Mark Radulich discuss Onslaught, and we're going through 4 epic volumes. Also, the Unspoken Issues podcast just dropped there last night. We were talking about Spider-Man and Batman. Did you know that they crossed over, ladies and gentlemen? In the comic books they did. Spider-Man and Batman hanging out in Gotham, trying to catch the likes of Joker and Carnage. You wouldn't want to miss that nice quick half-hour podcast. Me and Chris Armstrong lay it all out there for you. Have a good time discussing some 90s comics. Go give the UnspokenDecade.com give that a little look and check out the Facebook page because you can also vote on the next podcast that me and Chris are going to record. There's 2 options up there right now. 3 days left on that poll. You get to choose either the death of Warlock, who was the oh my goodness, he was a techno-organic being, member of the New Mutants, or the death of Starman from DC. So both these deaths happened in the 1990s. You can choose which one we're going to talk about next. So, other than that, Mark Radulich, I've had a good time, buddy. You know, it's hard to hate someone you understand. So says Professor X in Legion Season 3. And Mark Radulich, I love you, buddy. Let's get out of here.
Oh, Jesse Starchair, I fancy you.
Oh, my goodness.
All right. Thank you for joining us on Movie Reference tonight.
New title.
Be well, be safe, and behave.
In Orlando, the Halloween celebration has already begun. So don't wait. Treat yourself to an Orlando escape. From Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Orlando Resort, to Halloween Spooktacular at SeaWorld, to Mickey's Not-So-Scary Halloween Party at Walt Disney World. No one tricks and treats like Orlando, the Halloween vacation capital of the world. For official event schedules, discounted attraction tickets, and hotel deals, click to visitorlando.com. Did you know in Orlando, the Halloween celebration has already begun? So don't wait. Treat yourself to an Orlando escape. From Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Orlando Resort, to Halloween Spooktacular at SeaWorld, to Mickey's Not-So-Scary Halloween Party at Walt Disney World. No one tricks and treats like Orlando, the Halloween vacation capital of the world. For official event schedules, discounted attraction tickets, and hotel deals, click to visitorlando.com.